This game is like a dream come true for all of us that have watched mech animes as kids and have always wanted to pilot one. Yo, what's good? It's Minstora. Lately, y'all, I've hopped back into this game I first started playing a little bit over a year ago, and that is Iron Rebellion. For those of y'all wondering what exactly Iron Rebellion is, it's a Quest/PC VR first-person shooter, kind of, right? It is first-person, but you play as a pilot that's piloting a mech, and you fight in these massive maps in a few different game modes against another team of enemy mechs or just straight up 1v1, and you're either completing an objective or being the first person or team to get 20 kills or something like that, right? Etc, etc. But that's just a small summary. In reality, this game is so much cooler, and it really does accurately give you that feeling of piloting a mech that, you know, you've always dreamed of as a kid, that traditional games on a console or PC just can't provide. When someone says what's the big deal about VR, I like to point them towards games like this. It's like I said, you can't get this feeling from a non-VR type of game. And I say this as someone who loves other mech games like Titanfall 2 or Hawken. Now I may be talking up this game, but to set expectations, it is still in early access, all right? So it isn't perfect. It has its faults and it isn't technically complete. Still, I feel like this game is an easy recommend given its current state and the fact that it's only $15. I started playing this game again after taking a break from it, you know, for a few months because I was looking for something to just get a few matches in here and there, something for like those shorter gameplay sessions. And I remembered this game and I was wondering, oh, you know, how has it been doing and what kind of improvements have been made to it, as the game has been in early access for a little while now. And when I looked on the official Discord to see how much had changed, man, it's like a completely different game in just a short amount of time. So yes, it is still in early access and it's not complete, but it already, even in its current state, provides a lot of fun and is a quality experience. Plus, because they are charging money now for this product, I do feel like making a review on it is more than fair, especially now that it's been in early access for well over a year. But with that, right? What is it exactly that makes this game so good in my opinion? Well, let me go ahead and break it down for you, right? First, let's talk the most important aspect, in my opinion, for a game like this, and that's gameplay and fun factor. So right out the gate, I will say that this game is just tons of fun, right? The combat is both high octane and strategic. You can go absolutely balls to the wall, guns blazing, or you can be more strategic about how you engage enemy mechs, and that all comes down to your loadout, right? Yes, this game, it has a loadout system, and I think its execution here is really dope, as it determines what kind of gameplay experience you're going to be able to go for. The choice is really all yours. So for the mech specifically, you got three choices. You can go with assault, scout, or heavy. The assault mech is your standard mech. It lies dead in the middle in every aspect. It's your all-rounder in speed, defense, offense, utility, all that, right? It can equip two weapons, although it doesn't have a special weapon available to it like some of the other mechs do. But it is without a doubt the best mech to learn the game in and get a variety of experience with. It, you know, with this mech, you're always going to be capable of being very reliable, let's say, right? Engaging in skirmishes, taking a few hits, rushing to capture objectives. While you won't be the best at any of these things, you'll be very capable at all of them. Next up, my favorite mech, you know, pardon the bias a little bit, the scout. All right, this thing is a speed demon. Okay, I like to call this one, I think it's like the Liger Jaeger is the one from Zoids, that really fast mech. This is that for me. This is my speed demon. All right, the other mechs consume boost to sprint quickly, but this mech doesn't have to do that. It's just constantly in boost mode, like endlessly, so it's just always sprinting and darting around the battlefield, right? And for vertical boosting, like temporary flight, it can fly the highest and the longest, making it an excellent, well, you know, scout. It can very quickly go from one side of the map to the other to capture points better than anyone else. And it's great at pinging enemy mechs to show your allies on their HUD where those enemies are. To compensate for all this though, it does have the lowest HP pool. And whereas everyone else, all the other mech types can equip 2 weapons, one to each arm, this mech only has 1 slot available for an offensive weapon, with your other weapon always being a smoke launcher, which yeah, may be a downside, but can also be a huge advantage. The smoke you can dish out from this thing can actually get pretty thick, and it's quite useful at creating just a bunch of chaos, right? I cannot tell you how many times I put smoke somewhere knowing that the enemy is thinking that, oh, he's using it to hide. And while I have their attention on that smoke and they're waiting for me to pop out, I've instead flanked around them and caught them with a surprise attack from behind. It's super satisfying, like every time I manage to pull it off. There are times where I and you will miss, being able to fire off 2 weapons at once for that massive damage. But with your speed and being able to consistently dish out damage while you yourself are just incredibly hard to hit if you play right, you then add that utility that I mentioned earlier as a scout, as well as that feeling of every time I pull off a kill with this thing, I do feel like an ace mech pilot who's just completely outsmarted his opponent. And yeah, it's addicting. At times it will require a bit more strategy and skill to use than the other 2 mechs, but you see why I just can't let this thing go and why it's my main. No bias, of course, like I said earlier. And lastly, we've got the heavy. This thing is a beast, all right? While not my cup of tea personally, if you enjoy walking around the battlefield feeling like an absolute juggernaut, then this is the one for you, okay? It obviously is going to be the slowest out of all the mechs. You will spend most of your time walking, barely being able to sprint and barely being able to fly, but to make up for that, you've got the highest HP pool out of all the other mech classes, and the heavy is the only mech with access to the artillery weapon. This weapon rains down hellfire on entire sections of the map, right? Fleshing out or even killing entire groups of enemy mechs. If you know a bunch of enemies are gathered at a single point trying to capture it quickly, this weapon is going to put a stop to it with extreme efficiency, all right? Not only that, this thing is excellent at using some of the other weapons available to the other 2 mechs. You perch this giant massive mech on a hill with 2 howitzer sniper cannons, and even if your enemies manage to spot you, with all the HP you got a lot of time to take your time and line up a shot and take them out with a single dual fire blast of those bad boys. This thing is a tank, and you're gonna feel like one piloting it. Now let's quickly go ahead and overview the various weapons that you can add to your loadout, right? Keep in mind that for the assault and heavy mechs, again, you can mix and match your weapons. So for example, you can have like a sniper on one arm for long range combat and a laser SMG if enemy mechs manage to get too close to you on the other arm if you want to. Some combinations might be a little unorthodox, but the whole point is you can mix and match them however you want, right? So the weapons are the pulse rail, a SMG type weapon that rapidly, it shoots out lasers, right? It's amazing for close combat and sometimes mid-range if you've got some good aim. Also, it's a personal favorite of mine. They're very flashy and mad fun to use. The Spitfire cannons are these like semi-auto cannons. They're a nice mix of damage and speed while being good at all ranges, in my opinion, right? They won't KO an enemy in one hit, but because of their decent rate of fire, missing a shot with these isn't always the end of the world, right? Next up, we got the howitzers. These are just massive sniper cannons. They're very accurate, but also have a charge up to fire, which your enemy can see that charge up. There's little lasers that point at them, indicating they're about to get shot. However, if you're a good shot, it won't matter anyways. These things do massive damage if they connect, all right? You put 2 of these on a mech and fire together, they can one-shot both the assault and the scout mechs, and even put a decent amount of hurt on the heavy. Just try not to get caught in close range fights, because if you miss with this thing, you're done, all right? Next up, we got the Grad 12 rocket launchers. When I hit someone with these things, it feels satisfying, all right? And on the opposite side of that, when I get hit with these things, I can't help but panic, all right? The burst of rockets that come out of this thing are just, they feel so impactful. They explode whenever they hit someone or an enemy or even the terrain, and they deal explosive damage in an area for each hit, for each rocket that hits. They aren't the most accurate, however, and I do find them personally hard to land shot with, but pilots that are good with these things are deadly, as one volley can really put the hurt on someone. I'd personally say that they're good at close and mid-range, but they struggle at long range. Super satisfying to get a kill with, though. Absolutely satisfying to get a kill with, though, just seeing just this absolute explosion emanate from an enemy mech, right? And next up, we got the, which one is, yeah, we got the new weapons, actually. Yeah, that's right. The ones I mentioned earlier being the artillery and the smoke launcher. You know, I explained a bit about them and how they work, but lastly, one I haven't talked about yet is the frag launcher. The weapon of a truly skilled pilot, in my opinion. These weapons shoot out frag grenades that go further the longer that you hold the trigger, but you time when they explode. So if you fire them, you know, far ahead, but you want to trigger the explosion ahead of time, you can. Or if you know an enemy is sneaking up on you, you can do something like launch them off a wall, around a corner, and explode them when the enemy gets close. A weapon like this will obviously be good at all ranges, but it's highly dependent on the pilot's skill, like I said. Whew! Now, after all that, you can see why I said combat is what you make of it in this game. If you want to be a high energy, super chaotic, you know, type of pilot, go with the scout, rocking the pulse rail SMG. That's what I do. And just go nuts as like a super fast skirmisher who launches smoke grenades as cover for yourself to escape when things get too dicey. Or you could become this long range support heavy mech that just bombards the battlefield with fire from your artillery, or pinging enemy locations and sniping them from far away with dual howitzer sniper cannons. And for that heavy, if you want to be a grade A escort who catches anyone trying to sneak up behind your big gun for a surprise attack, you can pick an assault mech with rocket launchers to make quick work of anyone that is stupid enough to get close to your big boy cannon on your team, all right? These are just some of the strategies, or I guess you could say lack thereof in my case, as me just kind of being a Speedy Gonzalez and zooming all over the map, right? That I've seen play out in any given game. All of this stuff, you know, loadout wise, by the way, can be selected at the main menu, or you can make changes to your loadout and swap things out on the fly mid-match during the respawn timer if you've been taken down or you self-destruct your mech. Yes, you can purposely self-destruct your mech, and it even is interactive. There's a switch with the cover on it that you have to press, you know, which, come on, that's kind of cool, okay? Matches are honestly just, they're fun as hell in this game, all right? Everything I've talked about just leads to these intense matches just full of awesome firefights with enemies coming out of nowhere if you aren't aware of your positioning, or, you know, you being able to pull off these really cool ambushes yourself as a scout or assault, you know, to only then, you pull out this cool ambush, right? But then you think you're cool, you're really ace pilot, but then you get taken out by this like heavy sniper from far away, and it just comes and hits you out of nowhere, right? And because of, you know, stuff like this, it leads to these really dynamic, explosive, high octane, like I said earlier, but also at the same time really in-depth, strategic wise matches that are just really fun to hop into and express how you want to play as a mech, right? Because of all that stuff I mentioned, you know, you have your abilities to edit your loadout while respawning. You can adjust the enemy strategies mid-match too. That leads to the dynamicness, that's not a word, but dynamicness of it all, right? You know, after getting taken out by like a heavy sniper or something like that, I'll ask my team to make some noise, potentially make a distraction, while I shoot a bunch of smoke grenades to cover my ambush behind that big mech that was just sniping at us. Or maybe we'll bum rush the thing altogether and take him out and his escort, because maybe that giant heavy mech has an escort. So if I go there by myself, it might not be as good of a sneak attack as I once thought, right? So there's a lot of layers to this, and it leads to having a lot of fun. I will say that you don't even need this big strategic mind to go about gameplay and having fun necessarily. Yes, there's that type of gameplay here, but if you're good at just hitting a bunch of mechs and taking down mechs, strategy or not be damned, their team's gonna love to have you. You're gonna be a valuable asset, right? And all these kinds of play styles are just really fun to execute. I've been on both sides of things. If I want to test my skills a bit more in terms of outright just taking out enemy pilots, I'm going to hop into some team deathmatch. Or if I want to feel like, you know, just this, I'm contributing to this massive battle overall, I'll hop into a domination style mode that I've been talking about, constantly switching what weapons my mech is using after each death to deal with situations as they're presented to me, right? It's all here, and it all leads to just tons of fun in the gameplay that's on offer, right? Also, related to gameplay and what exactly inspired this review, it's the fact that you may have kind of hinted at it. I may have kind of hinted at it. I played this game on and off every few months, up until recently, and it's because the devs have recently added AI bots to the game. Up until this point, if nobody or very few people were online, it's just that you couldn't get a game in. That was one of the major faults of the game, but I'm very happy to see that now you can just hop in the game anytime you want with bots that are actually pretty dang good. I was pleasantly surprised as someone, I consider myself pretty all right at this game. These bots were giving me a run for my money, man, and they were winning matches sometimes. You can toggle the bots for any game mode or any of the several maps that are in the game, and as players do eventually file into the lobby, they're going to replace the bots, right? Lastly, for gameplay, I want to talk about how dynamic everything is, not just in combat, but everything surrounding it as well, right? Powering on your mech, you know, repairing the mech, everything. It's super dynamic. When you first hop into a game or a training ground, you're gonna spawn into this like dark cockpit, right, of a mech, and there's gonna be a single green flickering light above you, indicating, hey, this is the switch that you flip to start the mech's boot sequence. With the flip of that switch, each part of the mech or each system of it will hum to life. The first switch is gonna give you your power. Another switch is gonna bring up your controls physically. They like kind of pop up in front of you, right? Another is going to turn on your mech's display, and another one is going to bring up, you know, is going to bring up your weapons for you. And then another one, you know, they all have something that each of these switches do something. It's a step-by-step sequence that feels straight out of an anime. And as the first impression the game gives you, it is a damn good one. I'm not gonna lie to you. That first time I powered on the mech, it was so cool to experience for the first time. But even though I might sometimes be in the middle of a match, right, I do find myself just trying to get my mech powered up quickly so I can get back into the fight, right? You got taken out by an enemy, you want to hurry up and get your mech on after you respawn, you want to get back into the fight. I still can't help but crack a smile occasionally, right? From the boot process alone. And real quick though, I do got to talk about the cool way that this game handles, you know, healing or like repairing your mech in a match. So this isn't like other FPS games where you'll maybe find a repair pack on the ground, or you maybe duck behind cover and maybe your mech has like an auto repair feature gradually, right? No, not here. Here, your mech's HP pool is split up into sectors. Tankier mechs have more sectors to repair. To heal any given sector of your mech, you got to find a repair pack somewhere lying around the map. You always will spawn with one of those packs though. And you then have to turn and look up. You have to physically look up to your upper left, and you'll see a small screen displaying your mech's health gauge there in the various sectors. You then pick a sector to heal. You'll touch the screen with your physical controller. You know, you'll touch the screen, select a sector, and then there's a physical button you press on that same screen to engage safe mode for your mech, and your mech enters kind of like a half powered down state. And then finally, pressing safe mode, a lever will pop out for you to pull. You then pull that lever, and upon doing so, a bunch of repair drones will get sent out from your mech, and they'll circle around you to kind of patch up your mech in real time. It's so damn cool, and it's just immersive as hell, right? And it goes to show the kind of lengths that the team went through here to ensure that everything in the game feels like you're actually piloting a real come-to-life mech, right? Those attention to details in the gameplay go so far. I know that was a lot, but I really wanted to get all that in this gameplay section to convey what makes it feel so special and fun in this game. There are, of course, issues here and there with gameplay, you know. Sometimes, just to name a few, right? Sometimes when you're playing on Quest, you press the home menu and it will cause the frame rate of the game to just tank, to be unplayable even after you've exited home, so you gotta like restart the game and stuff. Or there's a consistent lag spike every single time that your respawn timer ends. Like, let's say you got taken out and your respawn timer is ticking down. Once that timer ends, there's like always going to be a weird little lag spike there. There's a few more annoyances I'm sure other players have found during their time with the game, but those are just the big ones that stand out to me right now. But it is early access, and again, given the price of the game and just how much, you know, of the game they've managed to nail, I would say stuff like this hasn't been a massive detractor from the gameplay experience overall. It's just stuff you got to be aware of, right? The next sections should be a bit shorter, so let's go ahead and jump into graphics and overall design in terms of like the visuals and the sound, right? For graphics, I say the game looks great. Not amazing, right? Doesn't look amazing in my opinion, but it does look great. Like I'm playing this thing on Quest 2, and for a Quest 2 game, it looks really good. It's definitely, I would say, a standout. Again, not the most graphically impressive things, you know, as far as things on the market goes. Games like The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, and Breachers are more graphically pleasing on the eyes, but those games got much bigger teams behind them. So of course, it's natural for them to look better. The game here, for the visuals, does its job and a bit more. I'd say everything looks good enough to the point that getting immersed when the rest of the elements of the game are introduced, like sound and gameplay, is mad easy. Right? Again, it being an early access, there are things that will take you out of the experience a bit visually. Those like those repair drones that I mentioned earlier, when they circle around you, they'll have bits of text on them that say placeholder art, and like it's like in big red font right on the front of those drones. Again, to be expected for an early access title, but it will take you a little bit out of the immersion, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, right? Outside of small things like that, as I said, the game graphically is gonna pull you in. Explosions both outside of and inside of the mech are dope as hell to witness. Part of what makes the rocket launcher so satisfying to down a mech with, like I was talking about earlier, are those big chunky ass explosions that you see when your rockets connect with an enemy mech's hull. That kind of stuff makes you want to get better with the weapon despite not being very good at using it, right? On the opposite end, like I said as well, when I'm getting doused with just rocket after rocket hitting my mech, you kind of have like a oh snap moment as you see the explosions around your cockpit and damage builds on your mech, and you start to see sparks fly from various components and screens from the inside of your cockpit as well. It's stuff like that that lends to the immersion and my overall praise of the graphics here, right? And each weapon and interaction, you know, has stories like that, right? The pulse rail lasers just feel really satisfying, especially if you're chasing down an enemy mech and just peppering them just constantly with the, you know, this constant barrage of lasers that will eventually result in an explosion of their machine. It feels and looks really badass. All of this to say, unfortunately, I can't comment on the game as it looks on PC VR, right? I've never played it there, but again, rock solid for looks on the Quest 2. For sound, I'd actually so far probably give it higher marks than I did the graphics. The sound is excellent here. The explosion sounds when you hit or get hit with rockets are properly boomy. Laser guns sound zippy, as they should, giving off a nice, I guess, pew pew sound effect. Like, look, okay, it sounds cooler than I'm describing it, okay? And both the Howitzer and Spitfire have really satisfying firing noises to them as the shells like leave their barrels, accompanied by this really awesome sounding like thunk like sound of the next shell being loaded into the barrel after a shot's been fired. All of it sounding proper, as if you're hearing it from the inside of your mech as well. The game doesn't just slap these sounds on there, it tries to imagine what they'd sound like from the inside of a cockpit, and it does so well. The sound of your boost hitting when, you know, you're dashing or you're flying is also really satisfying and help lends to the feeling that your mech is going faster or going higher, right? Also, the sounds of various alarms going off inside the cockpit as your mech is reaching critical damage does properly get your heart rate pumping, all right? And also, I just cannot leave out how absolutely badass that the mech sounds during the boot sequence. The various hums and beeps you hear inside the cockpit as you go through each step of booting it up just never gets old. There's also some minor touches here and there. Each small thing you do inside the mech does have a cool sound that accompanies it, right? The monitor you interact with for repairs gives like little beep noises upon picking sectors to repair. The mech itself makes, like I said, this semi kind of shut down or cool down noise as if when you enter safe mode, that allows you to initiate the repair drones. Like I said, almost as if your machine has powered down kind of just halfway. The sounds, in my opinion, were excellently picked and edited to reflect every single thing you do in your mech, as well as everything that happens to you from outside of it too. Really great stuff overall. All this together, in terms of presentation, I really do think Iron Rebellion is doing really good for itself. The team honestly just needs to keep doing what they're doing in terms of sound and in terms of graphics. As I said, it isn't the best looking game with a few things that may take you out of immersion, but that's more than made up for considering that while it isn't the best looking game, it does look really good for a Quest game. And as I said, it's a standout in my opinion, at least graphically, right? And for the few things that can break immersion visually, there are many more visual aspects of the game that it does get right that pulls you in immersion wise. Lastly, to bring things, for overall, to kind of bring the actual review section of the game to a close, overall the play experience in terms of like multiplayer, single player, things like netcode, can you get good practice with the bots, etc. That's what I want to talk about next. Let's jump into that. For multiplayer, I'll say from my experience, the community is extremely friendly, right? With the only downside being that during the weekends, during like work or school hours, it's going to be rare for you to be able to get a game with people due to there not being enough players on live actively at that time, right? There is a really active official Discord for the game though, and you can always try checking out the looking to play channel to see if anyone is trying to hop in during those times. You just may not have a lot of people with headsets physically on during those hours. There might be people on standby trying to get games in, but you won't necessarily see them in game, right? I would say the community does make it worth it though during the after work school hours, during the weekdays and on the weekends, once there is enough people playing the game for you to get some games in with other players, because playing with others in the community is just really fun. I ain't gonna hold you. It's just a lot of fun. There is both voice chat for a team and for chatting with the entire lobby via a toggle in the cockpit. And with the good lobby, y'all, you're gonna get people talking, get people helping new players out, get some people dishing out friendly smack talk, as well as for me, it being rare to run into someone who's like a poor sport, right? Pretty much every time I've, taken out another enemy mech, the player, it's always followed by someone saying, yo, that was a good shot, or someone complimenting my strategy like, dang, I really didn't expect you to flank me there, right? And I've always made sure to do the same to others, and you'll pretty much always have at least one other person on your team willing to communicate and strategize with you via the voice chat, right? Yeah, you got your quiet guys, but what game doesn't have it? This is all backed up by solid netcode. I personally haven't had any issues, but I do pay for like the highest package that my internet service provider offers, so I can't 100% say how good connections are going to be if you have like average or below average internet. But I haven't seen at all any complaints about it in the Discord personally. So all in all, pretty good, solid multiplayer experience when you can get some people to play with. But I wouldn't call this a dead game, as like I've said, after those work hours or on weekends, you are going to be able to find a good amount of people that you can get game with, and that's kind of been the case for me, at least throughout this in game's entire like over a year lifespan now. I've never during those times struggled to get a game in. It's honestly one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this game and have decided to review it, to get it out there, right? My channel here and on TikTok, I dedicate myself often to trying to put people on to dope games, right? I've done this before for several lesser known games already, like Daymare 1998, Heaven does too. And I'm doing it here because if there's a game that deserves to have more people playing it than there currently is this one, right? For the single player experience, if I was reviewing this game a while back, I'd tell you it's non-existent. There is no single player experience. But thankfully, since the few months ago since I put the game down, the devs have added and refined AI bots to play with solo, or even play with AI bots while there's other players in the lobby with you, right? And they do give a pretty decent challenge. Like I said earlier, consider myself pretty good at the game, especially when I get in the zone. And I'm not out here putting up crazy numbers against the AI bots in these matches, right? They strategize pretty well. They're not always grouping up and they're not always going it solo. They do a nice mix of both, and they'll surprise you too. There have been times I was minding my own business, maybe looking for heal packs or whatever, thinking I'm safe, I don't see any enemies around me, and then I end up getting one shot by a dual sniper AI bot. They're pretty all right. That kind of stuff can happen and will surprise you, right? Their inclusion here is a godsend, because I don't always want to hop in a match with other players, even if they are online, if I'm trying out new weapons that I don't normally use or a different loadout than what I currently main. There is also the training room that has a lot of different areas for you to familiarize yourself with your weapons and kind of just mess around with settings and the different mechs in general if you want to get used to something before even hopping in a match with bots. So overall, for the single player experience, I think it's pretty solid. You got a few different maps and modes to play against the AI on. So for Iron Rebellion's asking price, even if you were to jump in just occasionally here and there and just try to have some mindless robot shooting fun against AI robots for an hour or so across sessions, I'd say you got your money's worth. And then for multiplayer, if the time you're going to be, playing coincides with most others, that being on the weekends or in the weekdays after those work and school hours, like I said, then yeah, you're going to be fine, right? There won't be several lobbies to choose from, but you'll pretty much always have at least 1 or 2 lobbies to pick from during those hours. My hope is that this review does get some more eyes on the game so that, it may not be as big of an issue in the near future. But if you're not really available during the times that others are, then the Discord and hunting for games is going to be your best bet. But plenty of flourishing gaming communities get by this way, right? I play here and there this old school Naruto fighting game, and for their community, finding players to go against is entirely based on searching for matches in the Discord, as their game is played via an emulator. So that being the case here isn't the end of the world if you can't play during those busier times, if you can't manage to get the time to play during the times where the majority of the other players are playing, right? With that being said, the game does have solid netcode. I'd say overall the multiplayer experience is all right, not amazing, but not bad either. But the good thing is that, the good thing is that the quality of the game itself isn't what is reflective of that all right rating for the multiplayer, right? It's just that the community itself isn't as big as frankly as it deserves to be. So me rating the multiplayer as all right really doesn't reflect the game itself. It's just, hey, the community does deserve to be much bigger than it currently is, right? So hey, hopefully that's an easy fix on the line. Now let's go ahead and talk about these cons again real quick. I've already talked a bit here and there about my cons of the game, the areas that they could improve on, and even though they are only a few at the moment, I still want to just recap on them and the ones that I primarily have, right? Sometimes, and they are, right? Sometimes needing, to actively search for a match on Discord due to there not being, any players actively with headsets on playing the game during certain times. That's kind of annoying. There's some occasional graphical things such as placeholders, or work in progress assets that take you out of immersion, and things like consistent bugs such as, there pretty much always being a small lag spike that happens at the end of your respawn time or when your mech has gone down, right? Little things like that. However, with that being said, the price point of the game does make it to where I really can't nitpick on it too hard, right? For $15, you're gonna get plenty of hours of just quality fun out of this thing, whether that's playing with people or just going nuts against a team of AI bots, right? And thankfully, now that the game has a rock solid foundation, I can see a lot of those issues being ironed out over time, in addition to the devs now just being able to focus on adding more cool stuff and systems now that the meat and potatoes of the game are in a really good state, right? And with that, let's talk a bit about what we're supposed to be getting coming up for this game. Before I give my final thoughts and score I want to talk a little bit about what's to come and hopefully soon, right? As of right now, there are 3 mechs available to choose from: Scout, Assault, Heavy, with the plan being for that to jump up to 9 mechs. In addition to that, it's planned for each class to have a different style of cockpit. Currently in the game, if you include the smoke launcher, I believe there's 7 available weapons to choose from, with the plan being to reach 12 weapons by the launch of the 1.0 version of the game. In addition to that, the goal is to reach 8 maps and add new game modes. Although I'm not entirely sure how many is the goal by the time that 1.0 is launched, right? They also plan by that launch on having some of the most anticipated features and systems added to the game for me personally, right? That being mech modules, consumables, and a passive system. I'm really excited to see what those end up being like personally, right? And with that, we've reached the end of the review, and my final thoughts are as follows, okay? This is the kind of game to make you go, damn, I'm so happy that VR gaming is actually a thing. Like when people say, yeah, VR is cool and all, but the price of entry is steep, I can tell them that they're fortunately, they got it all wrong, at least when compared to other mediums of gaming like full consoles and gaming PCs, right? And I can point to a $300 headset and point to this game and be like, look at the kind of quality, dope ass experiences that you can get already in entry level VR. With the few issues the game does have, I can see them being hashed out over time, and a quality, immersive, high-octane yet strategic gameplay experience that this game can provide, it's an easy recommend. The graphics are very solid with tons of cool explosions, lasers, and more to feast your eyes on visually, paired with some really dope sound effects and sound design. The best of it being, powering on your mech as it hums to life, and the absolute panic of various alarms going off when your mech is about to kick the bucket. Recent additions really improved the single player experience, and the multiplayer experience is solid with good netcode. And when you do hop into a match with players, or as players are starting to file in, replacing the bots in a single player started match, it's a good experience overall. With everything in mind in terms of the game itself, its price point being $15, and how much bang for your buck you can get with that in terms of just the hours of fun you can get out of Iron Rebellion and its passionate community, the game gets an 8.5 out of 10 for me. I can't wait to see how the game turns out as it approaches 1.0 with all these dope additions to look forward to. But until then, I'll be playing it and enjoying it as I experiment with the best possible loadout for my scout mech to be the best speed specialist of a mech pilot that I can be. Y'all be easy, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.